Hey, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another virtual Kendall Connection Live, our last for the year 2020, and we are certainly thankful for that. As we welcome the new year, all of us at Kendall would like to wish you a safe, healthy, and happy holiday season. I'm John Bain, and I'm a Drives and Motion Specialist responsible for covering the lower half of West Michigan, and I will be a co-host for today's event covering MicroLogix migrations. Before we dive in, let's take a moment to review the Microsoft Teams live event format for those of you who may be unfamiliar with it. Open the Q&A window by clicking on the thought bubble with the question mark in the upper right corner of the screen. The Feature tab will show all current questions posted in the queue. My questions will show only those you have asked. Ask your questions by clicking the Ask a Question button located in the bottom right of the Q&A window. I encourage you all to ask questions throughout the presentation. We will review them after the last presenter. First up today is my co-host, Justin Lundberg, who will be putting the spotlight on a few Kendall promos and newly released Rockwell automation products. Next up will be Tim Denai presenting on the current status of the MicroLogix family and potential upgrade paths. Rob Durbin will then follow with a demonstration on Rockwell's migration tools. And last up is Ryan Hansen, who will close with a presentation on the different methods to build your new program. We will then have the Q&A. As I stated previously, feel free to enter your questions throughout the webinar, and a Kendall specialist will answer with a written response during the presentation, or we will review them at the end. With that, I leave the floor to you, Justin.
Thank you, John. Some of you may recognize me or my voice. I am Justin Lundberg, an automation specialist for Kendall, covering Southwest Michigan. I'm here today to present the KCL Spotlight. The short segment will inform you of coming product releases, training opportunities, and any new product information that may help you on your next project. Watch to win. Visit our new learning library at keinc.info/WTW and view our supplier partners on-demand training videos. Simply complete the form on that web page and you'll receive a Kendall electric cap. The cap has buttons to attach your mask to, taking the pressure away from your ears. Offer on this baseball cap is only valid while supplies last, so visit following today's KCL to get yours. Kinetix 5300. This pairs up with the Kinetix TLP motor for complete control solutions for that small to mid application. Features include a hardwired safe torque off, dual Ethernet ports, onboard discrete I/O, easy integration into Logix, and solutions in the 200 to 400 volt range. The Kinetix 5300 proves to be an excellent choice for building or modernizing machines with that lower axis count. E-learning continues to be a major focus as Rockwell is continuing to develop new content. E-learning started a year ago with a handful of topics. Now there are over 20 classes to choose from. As a control specialist, I recently took the Advanced Ladder Logic course. I found it thorough in content, yet fast-paced. I would recommend these classes as a great learning tool in the current environment. Health risks around large groups and social distancing have brought on a different set of values around virtual learning. Classes can be found at rockwell.com, click support, then training. My personal favorite today is the brand new 450L CIP safety light curtain accessory package. This includes a new CIP safety module and Ethernet plugin for the 450L. With this, we are finally able to obtain a SIL3 PLE safety category with any 450L light curtain over Ethernet IP. This promotes ease of use. Now a single software can configure and monitor a Logix safety controller with the 450L light curtain. The mentioned CIP safety module turns any 450L into a smart device. While installed on an active machine, the beam status can be checked to help find nuisance tripping. Smart device really means live coverage status and live diagnostics. We can now see individual beam strength of each device from the controller. These are just a few of the many informational opportunities Kendall is happy to bring you. If you would like more information on any of these products, please contact your Kendall account manager or automation specialist. Now here's Tim Denai to begin covering today's featured topic. Over to you, Tim.
Thank you, Justin, and thank you to everyone joining us today. I am Tim Denai. I'm a Kendall Electric Automation Specialist responsible for the support and sales of programmable controllers, operator interfaces, and additional connected devices. Today we are going to discuss the MicroLogix family of programmable controllers and learn where each controller sits in the product lifecycle. Based on what you learn here, you will be able to decide if and when your company needs to migrate to a new platform of programmable controllers. I mentioned the product lifecycle. All products hold a status in their Rockwell automation lifecycle. The life cycle for each product is determined by several factors. Two of the most common factors are the age of the underlying technology and the availability of components to manufacture that product. An additional driving factor can be the availability of a newer product. A newer product will incorporate more current technologies, such as faster processing speeds. Newer technologies and products can provide less expensive solutions when solving customer applications. The products indicated by a light or dark green status are those products that are most current. Software and firmware enhancements are actively being updated. The yellow status indicates the end of life has been announced for this product. Products in this phase are usually available from 18 to 24 months, but that is dependent upon the availability of the necessary build components. The final status is discontinued. It is indicated by the color red. If you are currently using a product that has reached end of life or discontinued status, it is recommended you have a migration plan in place. This will help to avoid unwanted downtime, which usually happens at the most inconvenient times. So what does all this mean for the MicroLogix family of controllers? The MicroLogix 1400 controller is active, and Rockwell Automation is recently committed to making it available through the year 2030. That's 10 years. The MicroLogix 1100 is active mature. If you're thinking about migrating away from that, you still have time to put plans in place. However, the MicroLogix 1200 is currently end of life, and it will be discontinued in March of 2021. Lastly, the MicroLogix 1000 and 1500 have already been discontinued for several years. So if you're using a MicroLogix 1200, 1000, or 1500, we need to put a plan in place today. And that's what we're going to talk about. For the sake of this discussion, we will focus on MicroLogix 1200 migrations. Option A is a relatively straightforward migration. We've already informed you the MicroLogix 1400 controller will be supported through the year 2030. You can replace existing MicroLogix 1200 controller with an equivalent MicroLogix 1400 controller. Using RSLogix 500 software, the existing MicroLogix 1200 program can be updated. You will need to change the controller properties and choose the appropriate MicroLogix 1400 controller. If you are using expansion I/O with your MicroLogix 1200 controller, you can still continue to use that I/O. If your organization is standardized on using CompactLogix and ControlLogix family of processors, then option B could be a possible solution. In this case, you would select the CompactLogix controller that most closely matches the I/O requirements of your existing MicroLogix 1200 machine. Utilities do exist that can help to translate the RSLogix 500 program into Studio 5000. The translation generally will get you 75 to 80% of the way towards having a working program, but it is best to allow some additional time to review the output of the translation utility. The last migration path we will discuss is migrating your MicroLogix 1200 application to the new Micro 800 family of programmable controllers. Again, we are referencing a MicroLogix 1200 today, but any of the MicroLogix family processors can be migrated to a Micro 800 controller. Similar to options A and B, we will need to select a different controller, and we will need to migrate our RSLogix 500 control program forward. Luckily, Rockwell has created tools that can assist you in selecting the correct hardware. After you have selected the Micro 800 hardware, then the MicroLogix to Micro 800 converter can jumpstart your program migration. We'll show you those tools in a moment, but now would be a good time to show you the Micro 800 controller family. The Micro 800 controller family can provide solutions for your small to mid-size applications. There are 5 controllers from which to choose. Several of the controllers have expandable I/O. Most controllers can utilize the plug-in I/O modules for expansion. In addition, the Micro 850 and Micro 870 can also utilize the 2085 I/O family for expansion. The Micro 820, 850, and 870 all support Ethernet IP. Now these controllers can become a part of your connected enterprise and be included in your company's digital transformation. Each controller is cost and performance optimized for your specific applications. This is the Micro 800 controller family. Micro 800 controllers are programmed using Connected Components Workbench, or CCW. CCW can also be used to configure Allen Bradley PowerFlex variable frequency drives and to develop HMI programs for PanelView 800 operator interface terminals. Connected Components Workbench software is available to download at no charge. Now I'm going to turn things over to Rob Durbin and Ryan Hansen. They can show you some of the migration tools provided by Rockwell. Gentlemen?
Thank you, Tim, for that helpful information. Hello, my name is Rob Durbin, one of the automation engineers here with Kendall Electric, and today I'm going to demonstrate to you Integrated Architect Builder using the MicroLogix Migration Wizard. The Integrated Architect Builder software allows you to create, lay out, and graphically represent your system. It also provides system checks to ensure that you are designing and creating the proper bill of material. Let's get started. I've already pre-opened the software, and the first option is to create a new project, open an existing project, or look at sample projects that are available. There's also resources for labs, online videos, and quick starts to show you how to get started. So let's create a new project. Here we need to select what kind of project we would like to create. We could start out with a blank sheet of paper and add our own hardware in if we know exactly what we want. Go through some of these system architecture workspaces, and we're going to select the MicroLogix Migration Wizard. We will give this a project name. Keep the default file location and click OK. Here we need to add our chassis, or basically add our controller to the migration wizard. To do this, we select Add Chassis. Here we can give this a name. And since we're going to be replacing a Micro 1200 today, I'm going to just put ML 1200. Click OK. This is where we define the actual hardware that we are trying to migrate. So up at the top, we have some options to choose what hardware we're going to replace and with what properties or what hardware we would like to replace it with. Again, we have a 1200 and we're going to replace it with a Micro 850 or 870 platform, depending which is appropriate. Next, we need to define our actual MicroLogix controller. We have an existing 1762 L24 BWA. It places the controller here in our existing chassis space and options for expansion modules if we've used any. In our system, we do have some expansion modules, so we are going to select them now. Go down under the digital, expand this. We have a DC input card, a 16-point IQ16. We just will click and drag and drop that up into slot number 1. We also have a AC output module, an OA8. And lastly, we do have an analog module, IF4 analog input module. Once we're done making our selections, we can close this out. We also have options for real-time clocks or memory modules. We could add those here, but I'm going to show you farther down how we have other options to incorporate additional modules. So let's just click OK. And lastly, we need to now generate the hardware. As you can see, we have a migration wizard here. If I right mouse click here, I can choose to edit, rename, delete, or even duplicate this wizard. We will go down now to the hardware tab, which is down at the bottom. We'll click on the hardware tab. You can see the hardware that the wizard generated for us. If we expand this, it shows that it selected a Micro 850 24QWB, and it put the appropriate expansion modules in as well. We also have some empty slots here for the 3 available plug-in modules. Let's go explore what other options we have. So down at the bottom in the device list, if we scroll down, our plug-in modules, we have analog, digital, communications, and we actually have some specialty modules. We can expand those. We have specialty real-time clocks from Rockwell, and we also have some Encompass partner products as well. Since our application is expanding, we would like to do some data logging. Spectrum Controls makes a plug-in module that has a micro SD card that we can use for data logging, and it provides a real-time clock. We will select this as a plug-in module. We will drop this up into the first available position. Once we've completed our system, we can now save it, and we can generate a bill of material. Basically, this is a warning just saying that if your project has errors or warnings, it's stating that you may need to check it. And also, it's asking if you want to connect to the internet so it can go out and get the most current updated features for the bill of material. Okay, IAB provides us a bill of material, catalog number, quantity, description, and a list price. We now can either save these to an Excel spreadsheet, print them out, and use this to further generate our bill of material. This has been a quick demonstration of the Migration Wizard. Hopefully you found this helpful and useful. Thank you. Now we're going to turn it over to Ryan Hansen, who's going to show you tips for migrating your controller program.
Thanks, Rob. Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Hansen. I'm a PLC, HMI, and motion specialist for Kendall. And I am going to be discussing how to migrate your program from Logix 500 to CCW. There are 3 main ways to create a new program. One is the manual method, which I am always going to recommend, but that is the most time-consuming and requires knowledge of both the CCW software and Logix 500, and really involves just locking yourself in a room and setting up the old program on one screen and the new program on the second screen, and just manually going line by line and recreating the new code using the newer instruction set that you get with CCW. It takes a lot of time, but you're going to be able to take advantage of all the new features you get in CCW, and in the end, you're going to have a program that's going to be easier to enhance down the road when you want to add new features or even make some changes to the logic that is going to improve on that machine. So the second method is using an import tool. There's a tool built into CCW that can take in an old Logix 500 file and convert it into a new Micro 800 program. It does a pretty good job, but it's still going to take a lot of work to resolve the errors and make it work. And then the last method is just copy and pasting rung by rung. Similar to the manual method, but using a little bit of the features of the import, or similar to what the import tool has. So we'll take a look at all 3 of those today. To use the import tool, we're actually going to start in Logix 500. And we need to make sure our program is saved in the correct format, a .slc file. And then we'll go into CCW and go under Tools and run that MicroLogix library converter. And when that's finished running, we're going to have to resolve all of the errors. And even in the most basic of programs, there's going to be some errors that need some attention. In RSLogix 500, you're going to want to go to the Save As, and we're going to save this file as a .slc file, and we're going to also check the export database and probably just leave all the defaults there. And we do that so that we can hopefully retain most of the descriptions and run comments in our program. Then in CCW, we'll go right to the Tools menu and select the MicroLogix Library Converter. And there we'll select the newly created SLC file from RSLogix 500. We'll also make sure that we have the right database file in there as well. And then we'll select the target Micro 800 controller. That isn't done manually, so you'll need to select that. When the tool is finished running, you'll see that a lot of information was created. There's new ladders, there's some user-defined functions and function blocks, as well as variables. Most importantly, there's this output window that shows you what issues have come up during the conversion process. And it's going to be important that all those errors and warnings are resolved before we try to run that program. And now we're going to take a look at an actual program and see what it looks like when we run it through that tool. So for the first thing we're going to do is open up the file in RSLogix 500. And you can see this program has a number of ladders in it. If we take a look at those, looks like there's quite a few rung descriptions, descriptions for all the different variables. So a pretty well documented program. We'll go ahead and we'll make sure that there's no errors in this program, which there shouldn't be if you're using your current program. And now we're going to save as, and we'll select library files, the .slc, and we'll also export the database and just use all the default checkboxes and descriptions here. And we'll go ahead and we'll finish that save. Again, you can leave all these defaults. That works just fine. Okay. We'll close that program. And you can see in our directory now we've created a number of files that we're going to use in the import tool. Next, in CCW, we're going to go to the Tools menu, and we're going to select the MicroLogix Library Converter. There's no need to have a program or a project open at this point. It'll create a new project for you. Here we're going to select that .slc file that we just created. And here we're going to leave this box checked. If you need to select the file manually, you can. It's looking for the .eas file. Let's do that. And then you can select which controller you're going to be converting to. It's not going to do it automatically for you. You need to select one manually. Here, we'll go ahead and select that one and hit OK. As you can see, a new controller was added to our project, Micro 850. In this controller, a single program was added, even though our previous program had quite a few ladder routines in it. And here we also have some user-defined function blocks and some user-defined functions. And if you'll notice, these user-defined functions actually are all of our routines that we had previously in our RSLogix 500 program. So if we start with what's actually going to be run in this code, program 2, we'll see callouts to each of those user-defined functions. And when we open each of those functions, let's open up the main, for example. We'll see that all our code is still here, although it looks quite a bit different than what was in the RS500 Logix 500 program previously. Another thing I want to note before we get into the differences is this output window here. For this program we had 84 warnings, and a lot of them have to do with things that would not convert. There's indirect addressing, there is some of our timers, some of our counters and things like that did not convert as well. Status bits. It looks like in our routine we had a bit shift left, some FIFOs, and all those didn't work, and it's telling us that we're going to have to manually create some logic for them. So it's going to take some time, even with using this program, to get to the point where you're going to have a working program that we can put into a Micro 800 controller. A few of the things I'd like to point out are the differences in the timers and counters when you're using this conversion tool. In CCW, there is a timer function that is much different than Logix 500. And if you're not familiar with both, you're going to want to understand exactly how each one works in both CCW and Logix 500. And what that tool has done is created a new user-defined function block that's going to mimic what we had previously in the Logix 500 file. To look at what's in here, you'll see there's quite a bit of logic to mimic what that function block was doing, or excuse me, what that instruction was doing previously. And when we see that in the actual program, I'll go to one of our routines that is using a timer. You'll see that there's a function block in place now that looks a little bit different than our timer block in Logix 500. But it's essentially utilizing all that same data that we had previously, and it mimics that functionality in Micro 800 controller. Same thing with the counter function. You'll see they put a block of code around an actual counter to mimic those the same features that you had in that counter instruction in Logix 500. And you can see where they've used that counter block in the program now. If you also look here, there's no real local variables that were created for these programs. Most of your variables actually ended up getting inserted into global variables. And for the large program that we just converted, you would expect to see a lot of variables. Instead, we see that it's just a number of arrays that were created to kind of mimic what those bit tables were and the timer tables were in the Logix 500 program. So you'll see we have an array of timers. Looks like some of the comments actually pulled through, which is nice. For the bits, we take a look at those. You'll see that the bit comments were pulled through, but not at a bit level. So in our program, we have this B30, it's an integer, but it looks like all the comments were stored under this one tag name. So if we go back to one of our routines, let's do the main routine here, you'll see that there's no comments on these bit names. So it's not perfect, but there at least is some documentation available, even if it's not at the bit level, but at the integer level. Again, the most important thing is going to be looking at this output list and trying to resolve all of these warnings in here. Even though they're warnings, they're probably pointing to something that's not going to work right in your program. And if you need to, we can get to this file later by just searching in the directory where your project is at. To get to that file, we just go under Documents, CCW, select the project that you're working in, and you'll see there's a folder in there called Conversion Report. Open that up and open up the .csv file, and we'll go ahead and we'll expand all this out so we can read it. And here we'll see the list of warnings, and what we can do is go line by line and make sure that we resolve all these issues. Most likely they represent things that need to be fixed, even some of the informational ones. And we'll go through and correct all those before we try to run that program. If you have any questions on what some of these files mean or what some of these descriptions mean, definitely take a look online. There's a lot of good documentation to help you work through it. Otherwise, you can give one of your Kendall electric specialists a call. They're very knowledgeable and they can help you through this. Alright, the next method we're going to try is copying and pasting. And copying and pasting is pretty straightforward. You're going to start in Logix 500. You can copy your rungs. You can either just select the rung and copy it, or you can get in there and double click on it and copy that text. And then you're going to go into CCW. You can't paste the logic in directly, so the first thing you're going to need to do is add a new line or a new rung into your logic. And then we're going to open up the structured text viewer and paste the logic in there in your newly created rung. And then we're going to want to take a look at that output window and resolve any of the errors that come up, similar to what we did at the import function. Now we're going to do a quick demonstration of what that is going to look like. Alright, so let's go back to that same program that we looked at earlier. And we're going to go ahead and select one of these lines of logic to paste into our program. I'll go ahead and copy this rung. In CCW, we're going to open up a program. We're going to add a new program, excuse me. Add a ladder diagram, open that up. And you can see here I've already opened up the structured text editor, but to get to that, you just click on this little arrow here. And you can, at that point, paste in the rung that we just copied from Logix 500. And you'll see this rung doesn't look exactly like what we were just looking at in Logix 500. So there's some work here that needs to be done. You'll note there's a number of little yellow warnings that need to be resolved. This extra data that's kind of floating out here. So it'll get you the structure of your code, but there's still going to be some work on your part to correct all the data to make it work in the actual program. So it's a little bit better than maybe having to manually type everything in, but it's still going to take some work. You know, similar to what we had with the import function that we previously looked at. Thanks, everyone. Now I'll hand it over to Tim.
Thank you, Rob and Ryan. Today we have learned MicroLogix controllers have a very defined lifecycle status. Apart from the MicroLogix 1400 and the MicroLogix 1100, all other MicroLogix controllers will either be end of life or discontinued by the end of 2021. Rockwell offers the Micro 800 family as the next generation of controllers for your applications. You will be able to streamline the migration process by using the MicroLogix wizard inside Integrated Architecture Builder. This will allow you to verify hardware design, and Connected Components Workbench can help you to convert your legacy controller programs. Now is the perfect time to choose your migration strategy and to move forward with that implementation. Remember, putting plans into action today will avoid costly downtime tomorrow. All right, John, this concludes all the key points we wanted to cover. We're going to hand the reins back to you now.
Hey, thanks, Tim. A great presentation, guys. Really appreciate it. We're going to move forward now to the questions and answers. So the first question is, which controller is recommended for the migration of a MicroLogix 1400 Series C PLC. Tim, can you go ahead and answer that question, please? Or Ryan or Rob, if one of you guys want to take that.
I can take that, John.
Hey, thanks, Rob.
That's going to depend on a lot of things. It depends on the 1500 controller you have and the I/O modules that you have. Depending on the 1769 expansion modules, potentially it could be a better fit to go to a compact Logix. So we just have to look at the whole system. But if it's generally just like the base unit with the inputs and outputs, you know, an 850 or an 870, depending on the size of your I/O, would be sufficient.
Great, thank you. And the next one's for you as well. Why would you buy a Micro 800 controller?
Okay, yeah, so the Micro 800 family is a very powerful, cost-effective controller for your very small applications. It provides a really small footprint, so similar or smaller to the MicroLogix family. It also provides the CCW software, which is a no-cost download that you can get. So depending on what you're trying to do, if you're doing a lot of machines with not a lot of interaction as far as data collection and things of that nature, standalone type controllers, they work very well for that.
Awesome. We'll move on to the next question. How do I connect to Micro 800s that don't have Ethernet? Tim, can you answer that question if you've resolved your microphone issue?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there we go. Took a bit to figure out the mute button. So the question there you said was in regards to communications, other communications, correct?
Yes. Yeah. How do I connect to a Micro 800 that does not have Ethernet?
So dependent upon the unit that you're using Micro 800 wise, the Micro 810, the only really way to communicate with that is an upload download via a USB adapter that's plugged into that. Otherwise, the Micro 820, 830, 850, and 870 have a serial port, an non-isolated serial port that's available on that. And you can configure that, whether that's ASCII, DF1, Modbus, multiple configurations. In addition to that, the plug-in modules that I think I referenced on the slide there are a couple of plug-in modules that can be utilized for communicating via DeviceNet and also BACnet.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And that takes care of the next question as well. Moving on, do the Micro 800s have online editing capability? Ryan, can you go ahead and answer that?
If Ryan can, I can address that one.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Evidently, Ryan's got the same mute issue I had. You have the online editing capabilities with CCW software, which I mentioned. There's a no charge. There's also developer version, which is I want to say it's about a $400 charge that's available, and that will give you the ability to do online editing. It has a different name, but the functionality is very similar to what you've utilized if you've done Logix 500 online programming with a MicroLogix 1400 or 1100.
Perfect. Why would one migrate from a MicroLogix 1200 to Micro 800 instead of migrating MicroLogix 1200 to the 1400? Tim, can you go ahead and take that one as well? I think that's up here.
That's a matter of preference. I've actually had this conversation with a local customer, and it depends upon what you have as an installed base. Eventually, even if we get to 2030, the MicroLogix 1400 will go away. So do you want to migrate at this point in time, or do you want to migrate a little bit further down the road? So the immediate is I can move from a 1200 to a 1400 without a problem, still keep my existing programming software and the platform I'm familiar with, but you will eventually want to get yourself to the point where you're looking at migrating towards what's going to be available in the future to keep your facility up and running.
Great. Would it be easier to convert from the MicroLogix to compact Logix instead of going to the Micro 800? Tim or Rob, can one of you guys take that?
Sure, I'll grab that. Again, this one becomes a matter of preference. Have you standardized on utilizing the compact Logix? If you have standardized on utilizing compact Logix, then you can still step through the tools. As I referenced, I think that was in option B. You still have to do a conversion. And anytime you do a conversion, I think Ryan addressed that very well. Anytime you do a conversion, you're going to get a portion of the engineering to move across. Sometimes it's better to just start with my program and from scratch, how can I bring it forward? So you can move forward whether it's compact Logix or into Micro 800, and either one would be a good solution.
Got it. Are there any Micro 800 controllers that support DNP3 communication protocol?
So I see David's question, and actually I had to take a look at that one because it's very similar to Modbus. I'd need to see if there is an additional module that is that can be plugged in that can give us that communications, or if that is, I don't see anything built right into the serial port, so that would have to be a third-party communications module.
Okay. Does CCW not allow subroutines? I noticed they were not converted when Ryan was doing his part of the presentation. Ryan, can you expand on that a little bit, please?
Well, I guess I'm not exactly sure what you mean by subroutines. So CCW does allow you to have multiple ladders. It's just when you do the automated migration, it puts it into those into the user-defined functions, because that's just the way Rockwell chose to deal with it. You know, it's really up to you. That's why I recommend just manually migrating it if it's possible, because you're going to get a program that's structured in the way that you want, with better names and symbols that are more that more reflect what's going on in that program. You know, what you have in the older controllers is bit tables and things like that, where your descriptions are kind of buried behind the bit names. And the new controllers, you get a chance to actually name things the way you want, put descriptions on the rungs. You know, you can create your own function blocks, which is a great way to have code reuse. So I you know, again, I'd really want to emphasize that it's worth migrating it and putting it into words that make sense to you, that utilize the new programming language, so that you can make enhancements and, you know, be able to work with that data down the road.
Thanks, John.
John, can I add into Ryan's comments there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Dixon, thanks for being on the call, and it's good to hear from you again. The piece that happened in the translation utility was the subroutines were all converted into user-defined function blocks, specifically to Ryan's point. So you're going to be able to call them out. And again, the utility does that. It's the cleanest way for them to take what is existing and bring it forward for you. And then as regards to the CCW programming, quite ugly compared to RSLogix 500. I don't know if you would have seen it there, but when you utilize CCW, initially there was a difference in the programming than what we're familiar with if we've grown up with RSLogix 500 or RSLogix 5 software. But there is a theme that you can select, which is Logix, and when you do that, it makes it appear, the instructions look like you would be used to seeing them in RSLogix 500. And if you flip the switch back to just classic, I think it is, then it shows it as it is in CCW. So Rockwell has recognized that and has done some things to move it forward so that it has an RSLogix 500 look and feel.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. Are the Micro 800 controllers as robust as the Micro 1400? Tim, that seems like another question up your alley.
I would say that they are. I've got customers that are utilizing them, put it into an industrial environment. Some they've just put into the cabinet, locked it away, and never touch it again. So it's been just as robust as the 1400, as the MicroLogix family, I want to say. And it depends upon the controller that you've got. Again, if you have a MicroLogix 1400, it's going to be around for another 10 years or so. So we're not telling you need to change that right now, but we do have an adequate replacement for that.
Is it better to stay with the MicroLogix 1400 controller upgrade option and stay with Logix 500 rather than try to convert to Logix 5000?
I can take that, John.
Awesome.
Go, Rob.
Thanks.
Okay, so it's really preference again, like Tim had said. Like you said, the 1400 is going to be around for a while. One thing that we didn't hear show today was, I know in the latest RS Logix 500 software, you can do a file save as ACD file. And if you use placeholders as your IO type, it will automatically take your RSS file and save it as a .acd file. And then you can open it up and pick the controller. Now you may have to do some search and replace on some of the IO tags to get them to line up with the IO points, but that's a pretty clean conversion option as well.
Thank you, Rob. Which operator interfaces will work with the Micro 800 PLCs? Tim, do you want to expand on that a little bit from your earlier question?
So the Panel View 800 family is really the family that's built and designed to be utilized with the Micro 800. Again, when you start looking at operator interface and the cost of the operator interface and the cost of the controller, both the Panel View 800 and the Micro 800 are very economical, so they're going to fit in the same price point that a customer is looking at. And the color, I should reference this, the color on the Panel View 800, I have quite a few customers that have utilized that, and it's a very sharp, crisp color, and customers have been very happy and pleased with that Panel View 800.
Thank you. Next question. You have to have CCW Developer Edition to do online changes, correct? Standard Edition does not allow online changes.
Yes, I can take that, John. Yeah, that is a correct statement. The Developer Edition does have online editing, so there is a charge for that, but it's fairly minimal. And if you're going to use the Micro 800 family products, it could be something you might want to look at.
I would add to what Rob said, the developer does give you an additional feature, which we didn't mention, probably should have. There is the ability to simulate your project with the standard edition or the no charge edition. You can do that and run for about 10 minutes. But if you use the developer edition, you can simulate your application and do that without hardware in front of you.
Good stuff. Does Rockwell or Kendall provide a service to convert the program from the old software to the new software? Ryan, can you are you aware of any program, or is anybody aware of any program that we have with Rockwell to do the software conversion?
I'm not aware of a program. This is Tim. I'm not aware of either a Rockwell or Kendall program. I know from a Rockwell standpoint, we can get you in touch with an engineer, potentially do like a block of time. It depends upon how many of those that you have. What we have done with our customers is step through some of the tools that both Ryan and Rob showed today, which hopefully can ease things along the way. Again, this is it's a low dollar amount, this item. The controller is, so there's a lot of tools that have been made available either online via YouTube videos or some of the tools that Rockwell has. So I would say work with your Kendall or Rockwell account managers and specialists and find out if we can help you through this one.
Thanks, Tim. Can I make changes online? Yes, we just covered that question. Do Micro 800s with Ethernet port have Modbus TCP capability? Tim, that's another communication question for you.
Yeah, I'm going to say that's just Ethernet IP. I haven't tried to do Modbus TCP IP, and I was going to try to play with the software here, but I'm pretty darn certain it's just Ethernet IP that we can communicate.
No, it does do Modbus TCP as well.
Does it? I stand corrected. Yes. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Can the Micro 800 be a master on the Ethernet IP network? Ryan or Tim, you guys want to take that one?
Go, Ryan.
I guess I'm not sure what you mean by being a master on it. You know, it's able to communicate with a number of different devices using messaging, but you're not going to be able to set up remote I/O or or just I should say distributed I/O. Aside from doing some minor devices using like DeviceNet, there's a plugin module for that. So I'm not sure if I'm hitting what you're looking for there exactly, but it's able to communicate, but it's not really going to be able to control peripheral devices. It can also control things or communicate with things like the Kinetix 300 drives, the Kinetix 5100, some of our PowerFlex drives. It can talk to them over Ethernet. It can send messages to them, but it's never really going to own a device in the same way that a ControlLogix or CompactLogix processor does.
Yeah, I think a way to say that is it can do explicit messaging, but not implicit messaging.
So it cannot control I/O.
Rob, that was a much better way to say it. Thank you.
Can I copy and paste multiple rungs rather than one at a time?
Ryan?
That's another question for you.
Yes, it is possible to do that. So really it comes down to your own preference for how you want to copy and paste those in, but you can select multiple rungs in 500 and paste them in the same way that we just demonstrated.
Can you use binary bits? Does somebody want to take that one? Not sure who to address that to.
It doesn't have B bits like the MicroLogix does. It's everything it's create. You create a tag name and then you either tell it it's a bool bit or a dent or an integer. So you create the name and then you tell it what type of atomic data structure it is.
Thanks, Rob. What is the purpose of creating a programming software that is radically different in how everything is represented, and why did Rockwell not put more effort into making the import translation of the RSLogix programs more seamless? Ooh.
Nobody wants to touch that one, so I'll
Thanks for volunteering, Tim. I appreciate it.
I'm going to botch the number, but there's an IEC standard, IEC 611.3 or something along that line, that is basically the open standards for programming. Ladder is one version of programming, structured text is another, function block diagram is another. And this product was developed with that in mind to be able to apply globally and to be addressed or programmed by multiple resources who have different strengths and abilities. And yes, there's a migration away from what we have seen as the RSLogix 500 version, but just as RSLogix 500 was a deviation from APS and AI software, which have been around for a long time, it's the next generation, if you will. So they have definitely made some strides. I will go back again with the Logix theme to migrate forward and make it look and feel a little bit that way. But I've seen plenty of instances of customers that have taken this with never having had experience in RSLogix 500 and have been able to program adequately with it. So it's a matter of comfort. I would tell you that probably every one of the specialists here that's involved with this presentation was very much in that same boat because it is different, but after you get used to using it, it does become a very useful tool.
Thanks, Tim. Excellent answer. You can still monitor tag values online with the free version, correct? The ability to edit comes with the developer version.
Yeah, that is correct. You can monitor values, and I believe you can even change values. But again, you can't edit the program without the developer.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Rob. Is the CCW developer version covered in the integrator's toolkit?
I can answer that too. Yes, it is.
Fantastic. How does the Micro 800 talk to compact or ControlLogix? Produce and consume tags or explicit messaging?
Explicit messaging. There's
Thank
no
you,
tags on this one.
Yep. Does it have analog capability?
Yes, it does. Dependent upon the model that you select, they have analog capability, and the plugin modules, you have analog modules for the plugin units too.
Thanks, Tim. Will you be able to RS Logix 5000 or Studio 5000 software eventually to program the Micro 800 instead of CCW? So will you be able to program Micro 800 and 5000? No.
No, the answer is no.
Thank you. If you are creating a Micro 800 PLC program from scratch, you have subroutines and JSRs. Does the Micro 800 programming use quick key mode similar to RS Logix 500?
So let's go to the creating migrate and the subroutines and JSRs. You're still calling out, but you're calling out a user-defined function block. Just it's a different vernacular, but it's the same concept, Mike. And then the quick key modes. I do not know. I've gotten so used to just the point and click with the mouse. I didn't look for quick key modes. I don't know, Rob or Ryan, do you have any input on that? Rob, you would remember from doing quick key stuff with the AI.
I think you can do like XIC and TON, I believe, if that's what I think Mike is referring to. But as far as quick key specifically, I don't know.
Like an alt or controls certain keys, I believe that I know that there's that functionality still in RS Logix 500. I haven't used it in a long time, but I haven't seen therefore if I can do that in CCW, just because I tend not to use the keyboard as much.
Got it. Thanks, guys. What is the current version shipping of the CCW software?
Version 12. That's available for download.
Moving on. Do the Micro 800 processors have an onboard high-speed counter, or is that a separate module? Tim or Rob, you want to take that?
Yeah, I believe so. If you get the DC input models, they do high-speed counter. I don't know off the top of my head what the kilohertz rate is or whatever, but they do. And there are, I think, expansion modules in the 850 and 870 for high-speed counter cards too.
Thanks, Rob. Is there a good manual for conversions that Rockwell has to offer? Ryan, did you find any manuals handy when you were making your part of the presentation?
There's some manuals. There's a lot of presentations online, including ours, I think, in the future here. So, like I said, the Micro 800 represents a more economical series from Rockwell. And initially, when they released it, the intent was it was supposed to be kind of a self-guided system that didn't require specialists, and it's definitely evolved from that point. But they made a lot of information available online, and there's a number of third-party websites and videos out there too that can kind of step you through just about anything you want to do on that Micro 800.
There is a document that Rockwell has, but it's probably about 2 years old. So there have been more tools that have been developed, and I would agree with Ryan. What's either available through online, either knowledge base or YouTube videos, have been a great tool to be able to utilize. Also, the question about the high-speed counter, built in is 100 kilohertz high-speed counter on those units.
Thank you, Tim. Can a Micro 800 talk to a panel view +6 or 7? Tim, that's another communication question if you are willing to answer that.
I don't know for certain, but I'm going to go back to take a look at the cost of the controller that you have, the Micro 850 even or 870 being even on the high end versus the cost of that operator interface. I think you'd want to get down to utilizing a panel view 800. I can double check if we can do the panel view +6 or 7, unless Rob or Ryan, you would know off the hand.
I'm trying to look up the document right now, but I do believe the panel view +6 and 7 can communicate to them. So if you already have one on the system, you needed to, I think it's possible. But again, to Tim's point, if you're looking for an economical solution, you probably want to stick with the panel view 800. It's pretty well to the Micro 800 series.
And you can get all the way up to a 10-inch unit in that PanelView 800.
I also, to Ryan's point, I think you can too. It's just that you cannot bring the tags in. There's no real import utility, so you'd have to manually type the tags from, into the panel view. And then I'll take the next question about, does the 800 support point IO over Ethernet? And the answer is no, Gary. It's just we don't have implicit Ethernet like a compact or a ControlLogix does.
Thanks, Rob. Is aliasing allowed in CCW programming? Brian, that's a question I'll throw your way.
I don't know the answer to that one.
So I do know, here's what I do know. You can alias, so your local IO that comes in, you can alias that to a different name. I don't know if you can alias an internal tag to another tag. That's what I'm not real sure about. But I do know from a local IO standpoint, you can.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Can one Micro 800 talk to another Micro 800, and how is this done? Robert?
If that's going to be done, it's going to be done through explicit messaging, Ethernet IP-wise.
Yeah, I believe that Rockwell has a document that goes over how to set that up, actually. It's a quick start guide, QS002, if I'm not mistaken. Next question is from Dan. I noticed early in the presentation they showed an analog card several slots away from the controller. I was thinking in the SLC 500 world, the analog cards were supposed to be put closest to the processor. Is this no longer the case?
I believe it doesn't matter in this case.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of personal preference too. I know isolating or putting your analog modules prior to putting input, prior to putting output, just segmentation. I think that comes with a matter of personal preference. Nothing that I have seen with the Micro 800.
Yeah, I haven't seen any limitations in the Micro 800 either. In the SLCs there is, so you just got to read the manual and make sure you are within the right number of cards away from the processor within that limit.
Or if you use IAB, it will tell you if you've configured something incorrectly.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, guys. And the last question in the queue, if we have a toolkit, then download a new version of CCW, do we get the developer version or the basic version as a result?
Okay, I can answer that question too. So there are two specific download links. So if you just go to the compatibility download website, there'll be a CCW standard, and then there'll be another link for a developer. And when you go to the developer link, you'll need to put in your serial number and your product key code or your company name to take you to that protected download.
Thanks, Rob. I'll give you guys a few more seconds to enter a question if you still got one. If not, we'll close out the session.
Hey, John, I did want to give a little bit of follow-up too in regards to that Modbus TCP/IP. I did get a little bit of a notice back on the back channel. We did a KCL about a month and a half ago with viral alert body temperature sensing, and that actually that device communicates via Modbus TCP to a Micro 800 controller. So we have some people that have done an actual application with that.
Awesome. I did miss one question. Which compact Logix will the PanelView 800s work with?
They will work with the 5370, L1, L2, and L3 controllers.
Thank you, Rob. All right, guys, I think that wraps up all the questions. Thank you very much for attending the KCL, and thank you, Tim, Rob, and Ryan for putting on the show and answering all the questions very diligently. You guys be sure to register for our YouTube channel and provide feedback to us at feedback@kendellelectric.com. We are always looking forward to hearing how we're doing on our presentations, and even if it's constructive criticism on it. So with that, take care and have a great afternoon and a fantastic holiday season. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.
Thanks.